Okay, we're gonna call the meeting to order. Can we please have roll call?
Yes, you may. Councilmember Kelly.
Present.
Councilmember Turner is absent. Councilmember Perkins. Here. Councilmember Armstrong.
Here.
Councilmember Granillo.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mendoza.
Here.
Mayor Miller.
Here.
And looks like we do have attorney on the phone, or excuse me, on the computer.
Is that our attorney guy?
That's Mr. Goodman.
Oh.
He also works out of Andrew's office.
Hi, Mr. Goodman. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. How are you?
Good, thank you. No,
Andrew's going to be with us shortly, I'm afraid.
no screaming at us, okay?
Oh, is it coming through loud?
No. I'm just saying, if we screw up, no screaming.
All right.
Consideration discussion regarding the creation of a special district and sale of land at Old Home Manor. Maggie, you doing this? You're real quiet.
Yes, sir.
There, you
Oh.
need, well, you need one.
I think you need to grab, I think Joe had it down there.
Just sit down there.
Yeah. He's got his mic, you got your mic.
Do what you want. Okay. Either way. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening again.
Again,
Good seeing you.
you too. So this evening, this is brief. We're not going to get too into the weeds. What we are looking for at this point is,
That's 2,
why is this out of,
3,
okay, this is,
4, 5.
okay, sorry.
6.
Just direction at this point, really. Do you guys want to sell the land out there or not? So the initial steps, really, if we decide to move forward on this, is we will order an appraisal right away. Right now, the best estimate is 40 acres being between 1.2, $1.4 million. The second step would be to hire a well-seasoned and large commercial real estate brokerage firm. They have more of even an international presence, and part of their job would be to create a sophisticated marketing package when it costs us anything. And then the caveat being anything over 1.5 million, we need to go out for voter authorization in a special election. So really getting back to it, all the efforts that we've made out there trying to lease the land has not been working. And we want to, it's just been falling short. So taking a fresh look at it, selling the land will provide some money for infrastructure projects out there. And maybe even beyond that. So next slide. So here, this is not the right one. No, there should just be. Sorry, Aaron.
Maggie, while she's doing that,
There we go.
if we were to lease it, what would the income be versus selling it? Well, I know what the selling is, but what's the lease?
That is going to be a case-by-case negotiation.
Isn't it common to do it for like $50 a year or $100 a year? Is that?
It is such an oyster out there. There's nothing that's common. So
Okay.
what we had just discussed before is how many jobs will you be bringing to the town? You kind of back into it that way.
Okay.
So,
Maggie, what is on a well-seasoned large commercial real estate brokerage firm? What kind of percentage do they get?
so there's not usually, it's against the law to say exactly what percentage, but typically it's 6%.
Okay,
Yeah.
not much different than a residential.
Yeah, not usually. It depends on, but they're using a large, like a CB Richard Ellis or Cushman and Wakefield. They have an international presence and they'll be able to get it out, everywhere.
Okay.
So, and they create are really, really nice. So here's the map for different land uses out at Old Home Manor. And this is just here for a visual, but the blue obviously is a business park. The red is possible RV park area, but anything in green really could be Parks and Rec, RV park, etc.
North.
Yes.
Correct.
Yep. Just let me turn my headset.
So without the business, over 400 acres that you could sell with it, Just another, like a little over 600. So if you do math, and you mean there's money there if you sell the land. So here are the next steps. And again, just this is very top level this time because we're just getting direction from you. Do you want us to take a deeper dive into selling the land? If that's the case, we'll order an appraisal, we'll get things going. We'll come back for another second study session to discuss further details and really get into the weeds of all the processes of that. And then based on that second study session, if we're still moving forward, we would go to a regular council meeting for discussion and possible action.
Could you back the prior?
This one or the one before?
We already designated those, correct, under the business park?
The blue, yes. So the blue is business park. The rest of it, I believe Josh is PL, zoned PL for the most part.
Sorry, not, sorry. So the rest of it is not part of the, and, okay.
Yeah, not part of the business park.
Is not part of what?
So the rest of it is not the blue.
So it doesn't fall under the same under overlay?
Okay,
There's-
so the property that you would be looking at it selling would be which?
So that's, if we decide to sell, that's kind of what we'll come back to next is where do we do this? Because if we want to put up for sale, that election is going to need to happen. Because if we get a buyer that comes in and says, hey, I want 160 acres, which is over 1.5 million, then we'll have to have that going. So that's something that we need to talk about once we get the direction to move forward on it.
Okay, so what, within Old Home Manor, what are you looking at? Which pieces are potentially for sale and which are not?
So, well, obviously not the equestrian park or anything that's already occupied, but anything else is pretty much up for grabs except for where the ponds are at, obviously. But really you could sell any of it.
Okay, so we're really just looking at selling a piece of Chino property for this.
So for example, if we wanted to try to attract an RV park in, part of the problem before was nobody wants to lease land. They want to own their land. They want to own the dirt that they're investing on. And I had several brokers come to me and say, I have people interested or not interested unless they own the land. So where am I going with this? It's a better situation all around because we'll actually probably get movement finally. Whereas with the lease, it's not
Okay,
making sense.
the,
It's not working, in other words.
okay. So the phrase that comes to mind to me is land rich, cash poor. And that's kind of the situation we're in right here. So
Absolutely.
for us to let loose 40 acres of Chino property, I don't see that that's not going to hurt us to have 40 less acres. But
Is it
I
just
wasn't
40?
clear whether you're stipulating that the 40 acres that we sell to somebody that we're not requiring them to build an RV park, we're just putting up 40 acres.
So if we
per
want
se.
to, yeah, so if we want to designate that area in red or 40 acres of that, what Andrew suggested, and he'll be here on the phone pretty soon, is that when you're doing your contract or your development agreement, you write those terms into that, making it clear what, not telling them exactly what to do, but what needs to be there.
Okay.
And once he gets on, I'll have him, he's expert on that part of it. Is it?
The 1.5, is that per sale or is that total?
And I'm going to refer to Andrew on that again, because I'm a little bit confused on that part. I don't know if that's I'm pretty sure it's per sale, but I'm not sure if it means entity to entity or how that works. We'll have to ask him about
Hey, look
that.
at there's Corey. Oh, there's me. That's a shame. Move the
Unless-
camera.
Michael.
Okay, who's monkeying around with the camera?
Wasn't me.
So then if we were to agree to a sale if it were to be one of those that is listed right now as the RV park potential area, we could require that is anyone that's we're going to sell that to would be required to build an RV park on that site.
So, and again, when Andrew, or unless Michael, are you on? Do
I
you-
am, but I can't give legal advice at this time, but I am taking notes right now to discuss with Andrew.
And Andrew did go into that part, but honestly, I'd rather him explain it because I don't want to say something that's not accurate. But he mentioned it goes into the contract and the development agreement part of it.
Are
So, but
those-
I'll let him get into the
Are
weeds on
those
that.
squares 40 acres?
Everyone is 40 acres. every
And we
parcel.
own the light gray at the bottom right that goes on the other side of Perkinsville? No.
And then the pink is, I believe, the equestrian park. So. I don't know if I can answer any more questions for you while we're waiting for Andrew, but if you do have any.
I just don't want to see us, excuse me. I just don't want us to see it, sell town land for. I don't know. I take it back.
So if we sell that town land and an RV does come up, an RV is a great income producer, tax revenue. And for the town, not only will we be sitting on, or we're just sitting on vacant land right now. Get a developer to come in and put an RV park in there, make money off the land and make money off the tax revenue that the RV park will bring in, if they do bring an RV park in.
Okay.
That's it.
Are we, the cost to bring water and sewer from one end of Old Home Manor to the other, or from Jerome Junction up? What is an estimated cost for water and sewer?
$1 million a mile.
That's the next agenda item.
Mhm.
What are we doing?
So, right,
First agenda item.
I understand that. Are we just waiting on Andrew?
yes, like, but if you want that question answered about the 1.5 million, what does that mean? Is it one parcel, one seller, or one buyer? What does that look like? Or we
No.
can come back to that later when we meet again.
Sure.
Because right now, we're just asking, do you want to sell the land? Then we'll take those next steps.
Right.
No, I don't want to sell the land if it's not going to give us enough money to get where we want to get. Otherwise, what's the
Well, that's
point?
it. That's the idea behind it is, yes. So if you can sell that 40-acre parcel, I'm guessing 30 to 40,000 an acre, that's about 1.4 million or so per 40-acre parcel. But we won't know that until we get that appraisal done. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
So with that just being a ballpark
Mhm.
right now, would that take sewer and water from one end to the other?
Well, I think if you're target marketing, like you had mentioned this, that I thought was very smart in an ED subcommittee meeting. You said, well, why don't try to market more this right here first because the utilities already run there. So if we can sell one of these first, then we can pay for further extension down.
Sell one of the business partners.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And once you get if a broker like that to that large of a scale, I've seen it with my own eyes. You don't know what kind of fingers that they have spread and what kind of people right now in this world are looking for a better quality of life to bring their businesses to. So,
As long as we can do it more than once.
And
Well-
Mayor and Council, if I may.
yeah,
And really, this is just for us to move forward with continuing to explore, because we don't spend a whole lot of time and energy to come to you and then say, we're not even interested in that. So this is in no way saying, oh, we're going to sell it. You're giving us permission right now. Any sell would of course come back to you.
Sure.
And we're going to come back to you again when we have more of the details, better appraisals, those kind of things. But for us to get out there and really get the good information, but we don't want to spend a whole lot of staff time if council wasn't even interested in selling the land. But again, like Maggie's indicated, nothing's happening out there. And she came in and took a fresh look at it because you know, if we want Old Home Manor to develop, if we want business park, if we want RV options, if we want recreation out there, we weren't getting anybody to do it.
Mhm.
And like you said, they weren't, if they couldn't own the land, they weren't going to do it.
Mhm.
And so the land will still be in Chino Valley. It just, you know, they'll have whoever buys it will own it and develop it. We could potentially get all that tax revenue, the sales tax revenue, all those kind of things that come off of it. And it will be a pretty good sum of money. And so we'll get more into on the next presentation. You'll have more information even, but about how much those things are going to cost as well. But it will be a substantial sum of money that will allow us to get infrastructure and things out there if you approve that, even at a later time, you know. But this is just for us to move forward and explore those options for you.
Okay, that went nowhere for me, actually.
Okay,
Because
so I
we got-
think, well,
I
sorry.
think we can get those two questions answered,
Yeah.
Mhm.
then we'd be able to make a better informed decision on it.
Sure. So
Yes,
what?
dude, just-
There he is.
Hi, Andrew.
Hey. Sorry, I was delayed.
Andrew, so we're discussing the land sale at Old Home Manor. And the question is, on that $1.5 million cap, how does that work? Is that per sale, per entity, per parcel? Can you delve into that a little bit more for us, please?
Yeah, if you are going to be selling a piece of property and that piece of property, whatever its size, has a value over $1.5 million, you are going to have voter authorization prior to doing so. If you were carving it up into smaller pieces so that they were smaller than 1.5, I think you would be fine as long as they were truly discrete and individual pieces. But if you have smaller pieces just for the purpose of not having to go to the voters ahead of time, then I think that's probably not under the authority of the statute when we get in trouble for doing that. So I thought that when we were talking about this before, that we were well underneath the $1.5 million in terms of appraised value on what we were talking about for the RFP, as it were. But if that's changed, I'm happy to modify my response.
All right, so to take that a step further, say that when we decide to sell and we list this with the big commercial real estate firm and they come in, they say, hey, Amazon wants 120 acres. So do we need to be prepared and go ahead and start working? I'm not asking you this question, how am I trying to phrase this? Then we would have to take it to a special election at that point and be behind ourselves instead of in front of ourselves.
Yeah, if you think that you're going to be in a position where you're going to have more than $1.5 million worth of property that you would be offering for sale, you're going to need to go and get voter authorization ahead of time in order to make it pragmatic. I mean, there's no way practically to market property that you then have to go to an election. I think you're going to limit your pool of suitors who would be willing to do that, to put it under contract and then wait out a citizen election. So it seems like if that's the goal, is to have a larger chunk of property potentially for sale, then I would recommend that you hold the election first. The downside of that, of course, is if the citizens tell you no as to that amount, then you later come back and decide to sell a smaller amount that doesn't require citizen approval at the ballot box. Sometimes that's not viewed favorably by the residents who said no to the larger amount. But that's that's a political discussion more than a legal discussion at that point.
Sure. Okay, well, the town clerk and I have already been discussing, working on some of the special election, not working on it, but figuring out dates and stuff as to when we would have to have that done by.
Yeah, you have to be on one of the 4 consolidated election days. So you've got the March, May, August, and November days. Those are the only 4 that you're allowed to have a special election. So keep that in mind as you're planning, that 2 of those election dates are a lot more open than others. So if you were to go in the spring, you'd have to pay for a single election on that item. If you go in the fall, you obviously line up with other statewide elections as well.
Can you explain what, because there's two parts to this. We have to create a special district.
That's
What-
not supposed to be on there. Sorry, that was.
It is. Consideration of discussion regarding the creation of a special district and
Yeah.
sale of land at Old Home Manor.
Page
Yeah,
one.
I believe is a typo or something didn't save because that's for later discussion. I mean, we're welcome to have it now, but that was kind of more for the next study session after we get direction. If you guys want to sell or not, you don't have to create a special district to sell land though, no.
Okay, that was really where, because
So,
I didn't see why you would. So that,
Yeah.
Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening.
what was that?
Me.
Was that you?
Oh,
I know, I sounded like an angel, didn't I?
It was like a voice from above.
Do you have any comment?
I have a question. In a hypothetical world, someone buys that property, they can zone it however they wish. I mean, of course, going through the zoning process.
that's,
one-
Mention that, yeah.
well, so Andrew, so
the
when we were
sale
talking
agreement.
about the RV park and wanting to not necessarily designate a specific 40-acre parcel for it, but you had mentioned it's pretty easy to do. If you want someone to develop that as an RV park, you write that into the language of, is it the contract or the development agreement?
It actually has to be part of their response to the RFP, because when you sell property, even if it's below the threshold that requires an election, it still has to be a public bid process. And so to Councilmember Perkins' question, you really do need to make sure that you condition your sale in the way that you want it to turn out. You don't want to just sell the property and then have somebody be able to do whatever they want with it if you have a specific goal in mind. So for instance, if you wanted to sell property to someone who was only for the purpose of developing something that the town wanted to have as an amenity, then the RFP would be conditioned upon that. The sale would require that everybody who was bidding would understand that the property would only be used for X, Y, and Z uses. And you could put a number of other conditions in there as well to try and guide to the types of buyers that you'd be looking for who would understand that it's a restricted use of the property. They're not just buying real estate, they're buying real estate that has a specific purpose. And so that was what we were talking about a little bit earlier, was how do you focus that? And we have for other communities created an RFP that did exactly that sold property with that specific purpose in mind.
Hypothetically speaking, if we sold one of these properties, would they, hypothetically speaking, someone wanted to bring in a BMX truck? We sold one of those properties, would Yavapai College still be able to tell them no?
So, and Andrew, again, I'm going to refer to you, but I believe that if we wanted to have conditions to the sale out there, that could be embedded in a purchase contract, right? You can have conditions on that sale that say, hey, here are a couple prohibited uses. If you're not trying to target specifically an RV park, but you want to have those protections, I think that's what you're asking, right? You don't want to.
Well, I'm just wondering, Andrew, we've been through the dirt bike track scenario, and ultimately it was up to the college to tell us yes or no. Now, if we sold this to a separate company and entity, we'd be out from underneath our contract with them, correct? And they couldn't say no? I just want clarification on that.
That I'm not certain what the arrangement is with Yavapai College that caused the condition. And so that's when I'm not ready to give you a good answer on, because I'm not aware of what their agreement is with the town. But if the town is bound by a condition, a sale typically will not relieve the property of that condition. So I definitely would want to take a look at it before I give you a definitive answer on that one, but I would not want to leave the impression that a prohibition that's on property, or if there's some sort of rights to the college to say yes or no, that those might be wiped out by a sale. I'm not sure that would be the case.
Andrew, they have a lease that ends in June of this year, and it doesn't specifically say motorbikes. It says noise levels, and it's just in a lease that ends June this year.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess I'm presuming that if you had, if you didn't extend that lease, you wouldn't have to worry about those conditions anymore. But more importantly, that if you knew going forward, you were going to want to allow for other uses out there, then you would have to make sure that in your discussion of the lease extension with the Alpine College that you remove that condition if they are amenable to doing so.
Regardless of who comes in down the line and what they want to do with it, is our first step to go out and get an appraisal.
Yes.
See, no harm, no foul there. We find out what it's worth and go from there.
Agree.
Is that all you got?
Let's find out what's worth and
You got more?
Also, there is no decent RV park within 50 miles. And all the events that we want to encourage, equestrian, shooting, softball, little league, soccer, if there is an RV, only get used.
pickleball. You forgot pickleball.
Yeah.
Pickleball, yeah, the International Pickleball Champions.
Yeah.
All right, any more discussion? You got more?
I'm on board with it, if, as long as that property can sell, and that the intent is to actually put water and sewer the full length there, so that then it's going to provide service from top to bottom. And that's, because if it's not going to cover that, then I'm not,
Well,
there's no point in it to me.
But Frank, we would have to pay for that. We would have to pay for the infrastructure
mhm.
Yes.
for that.
With
So
the
we
money
need to know
from the
what that's
sale
gonna
of the
cost, which
We'll find out here in the
We'll find
next section. Because he won't say yes or no. That's all I have to do. is yes or no.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
For everything.
because that kind of has a lot to, like you were saying, that kind of
He
has
said
a lot to
yes.
do with everything.
He said
Yeah.
yes, it'll pay for it.
It's not gonna pay to provide the infrastructure then.
No, I didn't say yes, it'll pay for itself. I said, yes, we would have to pay for it.
Oh,
So
Okay,
that's,
then why don't we just table this and then we'll get to the answers? Because I'm not gonna,
So again,
I'm not gonna tell you, yeah, like, let's go forward if I don't have the
Well,
information I need.
well, I think you just kind of want to.
And if it's item,
okay, so let me just. go
Frank,
back
you
a
just
couple
kind of want to
slides.
get a, see what the
Yeah.
land is
So
worth.
all the, we are requesting right now is just to move forward, to do more research and present you with more information in another study session. Because we didn't want to spend staff time if we weren't going to be told, move forward and do more research and come back to me. And then at that point, you'll have all the tools in your tool belt to make a decision. But we didn't want to spend all that time
are we
turning
gonna have an
money
answer to this on the next item tonight?
on the, for,
that's understood.
We're.
Well, they just want to get.
Well, we won't know for sure because we don't know what the property is actually worth until they get the appraisal. So we need to get appraisal for the property, and hopefully Frank's going to tell us here shortly what it's going to
Real
cost for
shortly.
sewer. And then at the next time we can get together and talk about it.
I'm not trying to avoid the subject. The problem is when you just want a simple answer about top to bottom, that's basically a small city when you're looking at 800 acres. So to discuss water and utilities for that, we spent the past year developing a plan for that. So it's a pretty complicated answer. It depends on which 40 acres you're looking at, where it is, what the use is, and what's for. And
Okay.
that's what this next thing
If
talks
we're gonna do
about.
an RV park,
So-
we want it to be up at the top, right where it's
Up at-
designated, that is gonna be support for the model airplanes, the equestrian center and the shooting range. Yep. That's why the RV park was
Right.
placed up there. Now, it's cost prohibitive to put in an RV park up there because of the distance from the water and sewer. Okay, an RV
Okay.
park cannot make enough money to pay to bring water and sewer all the way up there.
Which,
That's already
wait a
been
minute, are you
discussed.
talking where can we go to that slide? I'm getting confused of where top and bottom is. So
this would be
are you
more
talking in the
than
red or are you talking up by the shooting range?
No, in the red, aren't
the
you?
red.
Pink right there.
The next box up, I believe.
This is
Maggie,
both,
that one.
Because both of those could be RV.
this one.
Right now you've got water at Drum Junction. We've already got designs to get at 800 feet.
Right about here.
that's already designed and planned and ready to go. And
That's
then
what's-
if you sell, say 40 acres for $1.5 million, you could probably get water and sewer at least to it. And then they would have to put the water and sewer in it. Again, it's a more detailed answer in the next presentation. I would almost ask, is there a way to maybe give the final answer to this after the next presentation, or
Okay, let's do
Can we
that.
just,
can we table it till the
Sure.
next? I hate
But that's,
to put that out there,
Here's the
but-
thing, we're not asking, let's sell it right now. We're asking, should we put more of our time into it? Not, this is why I wanted it to be really simple this time, so we didn't get too much in the weeds, because it's not just about an RV park. There's over 600 acres that could be for sale there. RV park is a drop in the bucket only being 40. This is not just a way to pay for an RV park. It's for infrastructure out there and beyond that, for roads later on in town and
Right.
everything else. So this is a bigger picture than these little things that we keep getting into the weeds on.
Maggie, if I may,
Mm.
I think we're kind of sitting on pins and needles with an audience here waiting for the second item on this, and that's why it's going back and forth. So she's asking if we can move forward to get an appraisal. We're waiting to see what's coming up next.
I don't think that.
I'm good with an appraisal.
Yeah.
It's not gonna hurt anybody. We can see what it's worth, and then we'll know our answers after Frank discusses the next.
Tom?
I'd just like to see the appraisal. Give us an idea.
Danny?
If the appraisal comes back, says it's worth $15,000, then forget it.
Annie?
I'm good with an appraisal.
Corey?
We're not voting.
Okay.
I'm good with an appraisal. I think we need to know what it's worth.
Is that your answer?
That's what I would recommend.
That was kind of like a vote, but it wasn't a vote, okay?
Those were our opinions, that's all. Just
Just
opinions.
opinions.
Can we move on?
I am happy with that.
Good, good, okay.
Here comes that voice from the back again.
Item 3, presentation discussion of the integrated water master plan for Old Home Manor. Frank?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As I said earlier, the town engaged with the consultants. Actually, this goes back, of course, you know, Old Home Manor, we go back to 2016 or earlier, trying to work on economic development grants and such. So what we've done in the past year or so is really wanted to take a good hard look and get a roadmap for what it takes for some of these utility improvements. So the town met, we've had, what am I counting here? 4 or 5 meetings in 2019 with the utility committee, up to a dozen meetings and workshops over the past 2 years to get this done. And with that, we'll really turn it over to our chief consultant, Richard Aldridge, who is with Civil Tech. He'll introduce himself and kind of go over, laid out a good roadmap for a master plan for Old Home Manor. And you'll see it's much more than that, but it'll guide us. And as Old Home Manor is developed, how to deal with all the water aspects. This is not just water, it's water, sewer, stormwater, there's some landscaping components, and it's even got some capital improvement programs in there that can be implemented. Of course, budgets permitting in the future, to give us, like I said, I look at it as a roadmap. And with that, Richard, do you want to turn it over to you?
Mayor and council members, we appreciate you allowing us to be here. You can see this was a pretty collaborative effort. Even our design team consisted of myself as the branch manager for Civil Tech's Prescott office, and Rick Schroeds, the founder of Civil Tech, is sitting back here. We're going to tag team this presentation from here. Bill Greenslade from Matrix New World is here, along with James Holt, who is also a resident here. And then Celia Vandermolen was doing all of our landscape and working with Josh on the revising the landscape ordinances. So then we put together the 5-year CIP at the end. So I'll go ahead and get right into this because I think you guys have had a long day. So as you know, this is the property owned by the town. It's 842 acres in Old Home Manor. It's bound by Perkinsville Road on the south. The business park, and just the, you guys know where it's at. You go up to Perkinsville Road, it's all out there by the, thank you. We went through quite a process to get here with the planning, lots of meetings with the town, lots of upfront planning on growth rates and projections within the town. We looked at integrating the water, wastewater recharge, the existing infrastructure, and the new plan improvements that we're looking at right now. We have a 5-year capital improvements plan that gets to your questions about cost right now, based on what staff has come up with as our initial 5 years of development out there. And then landscape requirements that Celia will go over. You have a copy, I believe, of the draft integrated water master plan in the CIP, about 300 pages. I don't know if you guys got that or not.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, and then we'll do our final presentation.
I hope this presentation is not 3
Very
hours.
quick. We have,
That's okay. You got a 4-slide limit and you're on. number
that's
3.
right.
So we need to wrap it up, but.
That's okay with me. That's okay with me. Okay, this will go real fast then. This was the growth projections. We looked at all these different resources to do it and ultimately worked with Josh and Maggie to come up with we looked at 2% growth per year. And then when Rick was doing all the water and sewer infrastructure, we looked at 3% growth just to be a little ahead of the utility curve and not lag behind the population growth. Let me get down here. So our map's a little different from the one Maggie had. The RV park split out towards Perkinsville Road a little bit back during the process. We were looking at this. So the RV park, as you've been talking about, is this 40 and this 20. And so our 5-year plan gets utilities up to there. Just a quick overview of the build out that we've worked with the town on. We're looking at the first 5 years of doing about 15% of the business park development in the first 5 years. And then the remaining 10 years builds out the rest of the roof space. We had about 2.7 million square feet of potential buildings out there at the business park. And the ball field, we did some projections on when we thought that might be built out. And so the builds out years are shown on the right-hand side. And that's pretty speculative. In the planning, we looked at the entire area, assuming a little growth here, a little growth there. When we got to the 5-year plan, we looked at specifically what we needed for the next 5 years. So that's just a projection of when it'll build out. Based on a 5-year plan or a 15-year build out, that will be an evolving and I call it a living document because depending on what happens out there, it'll evolve. And then I think at this point, I'll turn it over to Rick and he can get into the real nuts and bolts about the water and sewer systems.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. If I get too far in the weeds, just pull my chain or something, okay? But, first of all, let's do that.
Thank you.
What we did initially was we set up a model, a couple of models. One of them is a water system model, which would identify what we need to do in terms of getting flows, adequate flows to serve all the parcels in Oklahoma manner. Pressures, certain pressures have to be met in order to make fire flow demands work. Maximum daily demands for commercial and ball field type uses have to be looked at. We've modeled all this. And we look at maximum fluid velocities. We don't want our speed of water to go too fast in pipes because then it becomes an inefficient system. So what that does is tell us, okay, we need bigger or smaller pipes. So the initial run shows 8-inch diameter pipes are red, blue are 12, and cyan are 16-inch diameter pipes. And there we go. This, for example, is a 16-inch pipe that we're proposing that would need to be built within the old railroad right away. And then this is Perkinsville Road here. Your other pictures you were looking at, north was facing to the left. I imagine you figured that out. I don't like that. I made north go up, okay? So all my pictures, you're gonna see north going up, okay? What we did was we modeled the water system to expand itself over time because you're not going to want to go out and spend lots and lots of money getting water over to these parcels in here if the water starts down over in here. So for example, this is Bright Star here. This is the Bright Star facility here, which is the well and the tank. This is Country West over here. Right now, we have a water line that goes all the way along here, down here, up Road 1 East, over here to Perkinsville, all the way up to here. So we've got this long snaking type of a system to get water up into Old Home Manor. That's one of the reasons why, I'll tell you in a future slide here, why we think that prioritizing a looping line in here is very important. And I know Frank knows that.
Oh, we're looking at building that within the next 2 or 3 years. We've already got grant money for it.
Good. But I think the main idea was to just let you know that, like, if you look at this is like representative of the 2035 timeframe. This is more representative of the next 5 years or so. So you can see that this area in here has no water lines identified in it, where all this area over here does. So I just wanted to identify that we're basically looking at a west to east fulfillment of utilities, because that's kind of where the existing ones are. Near term, what we found was it would be a very good idea to provide a redundant well and pipes and valving for the community water system, which is Bright Star and Country West. The Peavine Trail 16-inch diameter main that we just discussed, that is on our near-term high recommendation list. And then constructing internal water mains wherever we need them within Old Home Manor is also near term. In and around 2025, or when the demands reach what we've projected for 2025, there will be a need for pressure reduction facilities. In other words, if somebody comes in and wants to develop this area in here, under the current scenarios of your water system, you'd have some pretty dang high pressures in there, 115, 120 PSI. So if they build in there, we would recommend that they have some kind of pressure reduction facilities on their own buildings in order to knock down the pressures and not blow things up in their buildings. Longer term, we looked at creating a different pressure zone. And what that means is we would look at dividing up the pressures in Old Home Manor. It happens to be that the dividing line, I'll show you in a minute, where a pressure zone could go, where a division line between pressure zones could go. Construction of a 500,000 gallon tank to serve a new lower pressure zone in the long term would be something we would recommend, and you'll see why. New well connections and controls in Old Home Manor. There's a number of wells out there, and Bill's going to go through that with you a little bit later. But connecting one of those new wells to a new tank and creating this new low pressure zone will open up quite a bit of potential, I think, for you. Extending the 16-inch main east in Perkinsville Road and continuing looping it within Old Home Manor. Since there are two zones, there will be one stretch where there will be two pipes next to each other, parallel. One's going to be a high pressure pipeline, one's going to be a low pressure pipeline. That's common if you have two zones. That would be something that would have to be looked at. So all these things I'm telling you are part of the ultimate infrastructure that will be needed in order to make this a reality. And then the last thing is keep constructing internal water mains as Old Home Manor is developed. This is the pressure zone scenario I was telling you about. Right now, you have a pressure zone that this green and pink division line does not exist in this particular spot right now. This is our proposal. Okay. What you've got right now is one pressure zone. Out at Bright Star, you got a pump station which set at 60 PSI. And that's why some of these areas up in here are going to have such high pressures. What the idea that we have is to create two pressure zones, a pink one and a green one. And I'm calling the green one the upper elevation pressure zone and the pink one the lower elevation pressure zone. What this does, if you notice, is it creates a dividing line right here through Old Home Manor. So all of the business park area ultimately would be served by the lower pressure zone. Everything east of the business park area would be served by the upper pressure zone. In doing that, you have lower pressures here, and you open up all of this area in here for future use of service to the town in a new pressure zone. So basically what I'm saying is instead of 115 to 125 PSI in this region here, you might be down into the 70 and 80 PSI range, which is much more doable and much less of a headache for you in terms of repairs. So that's the idea for the pressure zones. And the reason that this came up is because we started looking at Bright Star, and you know the development for Bright Star goes down here, all the way down here, and over to here. These are higher elevations in Bright Star.
Rick, just real quick for reference, if you can't tell that, that's almost, he's almost down to Center Street, if you're looking for reference.
Yeah. Let me see where am I? Okay.
Sorry.
So these elevations are high on Bright Star. So if Bright Star decided to come in and develop this portion of their property, they couldn't serve it today, but they could crank up their pressure from 60 up. When that happens, then we really have to look at two zones, because if the pressures are going to go from 115 to 125 up to 140, 150, and that's just not sustainable. So that's why we looked at two pressure zones in the first place. I know I'm getting into the weeds, but there's going to be an end to this, I promise. This is the sewer system model that we created. And this is kind of a picture of the overall 2035 is the build out date that we've looked at, and how we would get sewer to all these various parcels that potentially could be developed. And it's kind of conceptual at this point. There may be areas where we don't need it. For example, may not need sewer serving the shooting range area, but we're providing it, and we wanted to model it as if we did someday have some kind of use out there that produced raw sewage. So same idea. We looked at 8-inch diameter, 12-inch, and 18-inch. Of course, the 18-inch is the one that runs down Santa Cruz. And then from there, it goes east. Currently, this sewer line and this sewer line and this leg is built, and it's 12-inch. And we would just expand it as we go to the east. When we looked at it, we looked at flow capacities. All this is gravity, okay? So it all flows downhill. We looked at minimum slopes on the pipes. The reason we do that is because you have to have a certain speed on the flow in order to keep the pipes clean. And then the depths of the lines. We've, for example, this line in here is pretty deep. And the reason for that is we anticipate some drainage crossings in here, and we wanted to keep that sewer line deep. So we've kind of looked at some of these things from a general perspective. As future design comes in, you know, these things will be ironed out even further. We did the same thing on our sewer models as we did with our water models. We kind of went from west to east. And this is the earlier phases of the development of Old Home Manor, and this is the ultimate phases of Old Home Manor. You can see this whole area up in here ultimately will be sewered. This whole area down in here will be sewered. But I just wanted to show you that we didn't just look at the ultimate, we looked at basically 5-year chunks. So for the sewer system improvements that we see by horizon year, the near-term improvements that we see that are needed for your sewer system is some kind of pre-screening at your lift station. And I think Frank's already got that started. I just found that out yesterday. Good call. And then there's an equalization basin up at the treatment plant that I know you're working on too. Those are what we saw at the existing pumps in the pump station, we think are adequate for now as far as horsepower. 2025, the pump capacity will probably need to be upgraded. Of course, by 2025, you're probably going to need new pumps anyway, but I would recommend you look at 800 GPM pumps at that time. And then the wet well should be either upsized or, you could put in an additional mirror type of pump station right next to it. I know that's actually in the original plans to have an additional one available, that there's space for it there. And then the treatment plant capacity, I'm sure you all know that it's getting to the point where you've got 500,000 gallons a day in your capacity, and you're probably up to 0.35 million gallons a day now coming to the plant. So by 2025, we think you're going to be right there. And so that needs to be looked at. In 2030, we just see the pump capacity again is probably going to be something we'll have to look at. I calculate 800 gallons per minute here, 1,000 gallons per minute here, 1,200 gallons per minute here. So every 5 years or so, I'm going to say, look at increasing your pump capacity or provide for future pump capacity when you build out, like in 2030, you might want to have enough capacity to meet the 2035 flows. And then in 2035, the plan for the treatment plant, it is time to start planning above and beyond. What I originally thought is if we start looking at this treatment plant capacity and upgrade it, you might want to look at going from 500,000 to 1 million. And then over here, when you reach 2035, you may be around 80% of your million capacity. So you should probably start planning. Rule of thumb is when you reach 85% of your capacity on your treatment plant, you need to start planning for upgrading. And costs, I know everybody's interested in costs, and I know Richard's going to come back to the microphone in a few minutes and talk about some capital improvement costs for the first 5 years. And you can get an idea of, what percentage of those costs, and then kind of extrapolate them and look at what the total costs may be. Do you want to ask questions now, or do you want to ask questions later?
Just keep going.
Let's keep going. Bill?
For those who recently got here, we've been in here since 1.
Good evening, how are you?
Great. My name is Bill Greenslade. I'm with Matrix, I'm part of the Civil Tech team. Jim Holt is with me as well. And we're going to double team on our portion of this presentation, which is to look at the water resources. So this is just a general map of the town boundaries and the wells that the town owns in that boundary. And what we've also shown on here is a couple of the type 1 water right areas. They're on here simply because those rights stay where they are. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. Okay, let's see, how do I go to the next one here?
Push the right arrow key on the keypad.
On the keypad, the right.
Oh, sorry. This one. Okay. So the good news is that the town lies on top of a very productive aquifer, which I'm sure you're aware, because not only you produce water from here, but Prescott does as well. It's a extremely productive aquifer, and you're very fortunate because it has good water quality as well. It's also not terribly deep, which is if you're in some of the other AMAs down in the Phoenix area, you have wells that are 1,000 feet, 1,500, 2,000 feet deep. And you reach the top of your aquifer here at about 400 feet. So you're very lucky to be where you are physically. Water level's about 145 feet, as I mentioned. The only downside is it is declining annually. And this is the result not only of pumping, but also of the fact that precip over the long period of time has been going down as well. So it's both a natural phenomenon and also one that's caused by pumping of the groundwater. As you know, wells used to flow here at one time. And so there's been a significant decline in water levels over time. The good news is it's not declining at a high rate. So that's all positive. These are the wells that the town owns. The highlighted ones in yellow are the ones that are within your service area. And you have 4 of them. One of them's out. Highlands Ranch is out and is not currently being used. And as Rick has pointed out, and we'll point out again here, is you need redundancy. You need backup in the system that you have right now, because if Bright Star goes down, you're going to have difficulty supplying your water. Another thing about this is that there are a number of wells within the Old Home Manor, which has been our focus. There's a number of existing wells, some of which have fairly high capacities. If you look at the right column over there, you can see. The bad news is that most of them are old. They're more than 70 years old. And we haven't looked at the quality of the wells themselves, but when wells get to be that age, you need to start thinking about whether they're going to be able to perform over the long term or not. One of the benefits of having these wells, even if they have to be replaced, is if you do a replacement well, then you avoid having to go through the well spacing rules, which can significantly reduce the volume of a new well. So that's all positive. This map shows where the wells again. It also shows that what looks like a worms track there. That's the service area. That's your current service area. And that's defined by being within 660 feet on each side of your surface lines or where your wells are. And so as Rick has been talking, eventually that service area would extend inside Old Home Manor as currently being planned. And that's a good thing. And Jim's going to talk about what it means to have a service area right as opposed to other kinds of legal water rights. The red circle on here is the area of impact of the recharge facility. It's called the safe harbor area. What that means simply is that for recovery of the water from your recharge facility, it's helpful to put the wells within that circle.
The green circle, right?
Thank you.
Green, okay, yes.
I took my glasses
He's
off
color-
looking for the right.
Well, unfortunately, you're talking to a guy who's red-green colorblind.
That's
So
That's what I thought. That's what I meant.
thank you very much for clarifying that. That's good. That's good.
Thought we had discussed that.
So this slide talks a little bit about the effluent recharge. You are recharging effluent from your treatment plant. The treatment plant has a permit to recharge. It doesn't have a permit to reuse the effluent, so it's all being recharged. And all that's good. It's good for your water portfolio, which Jim is going to talk about. The current facility, the treatment facility is permitted for 5 million gallons a day, and you're not using anywhere near that. So that you have a solid permit on your treatment facility. The permit for the recharge facility is 1,120 acre feet a year. As you can see from this little chart here at the bottom, you're only doing a little over 300. So there's plenty of capacity within the existing treatment, the recharge facility permit. The only thing is it has to be renewed in 2025. So in 4 years, you're going to have to renew that permit. So Jim is going to talk about the water portfolio. This basically is the legal side of the water that the town has. Jim?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Jim Holt. I have about a 25-year history with the Arizona Department of Water Resources, 10 of which were in the Prescott Active Management area. I was the area director for that office for a number of years as well. So it's been my pleasure to work with Civil Tech and Matrix and Sketch on this project. So thank you for having me. One thing we needed to look at when we talk about water supply for Old Home Manor is water supply for the town of Chino Valley. Some of these things are kind of hard to parse out. So we need to sometimes take kind of a larger picture as well. The town of Chino Valley utilizes a service area right, as does every small and large municipal water provider and private water company within an active management area. Service area rights give municipalities the opportunity to grow their system to meet the needs of their citizens as well as their businesses. The town of Chino Valley has a service area right. Service area rights are unique in the fact that they are essentially unlimited. You're allowed to grow your service area right to serve the customers that come into to the service area. There are a number of grandfathered groundwater rights that the town of Chino Valley also has. There are 2 groundwater rights for non-irrigation purposes, and the town has several of those. 2 type 1 non-irrigation grandfathered rights and 3 non-irrigation grandfathered rights. There's a lot more detail about these water rights that are in the larger reports. I won't bother you too much about those. The town of Chino Valley also has a large supply of extinguishment credits. And these extinguishment credits, the town continues to grow. Most recently, I think in January, the town made the decision to acquire some additional extinguishment rights. As you may recall, extinguishment rights can be used to pledge a future assured water supply for subdivision growth within the AMA. So it's important. The rules for the assured water supply program allow people to extinguish grandfathered rights, be awarded credits, which are measured in acre feet of water that can be pledged then for future subdivision growth. The town of Chino Valley has a large number of extinguishment credits, a lot of which came from irrigated land located at Old Home Manor. Another source of water for the town of Chino Valley is historically irrigated acres within the Big Chino Subbasin, which is the groundwater basin that lies to the north of the active management area. This is an opportunity for the town to retire previously irrigated acres and to transport some portion of that water off of those lands into the AMA to use for the municipality. And the town has a number of historically irrigated acres, which would yield a pretty large quantity of water for use by the town. So the town has a number of rights, it's a robust mixture of rights. So again, we thought it was important to get a good opportunity, a good shot of what these look like. This particular map describes several things. You see the corporate boundary, municipal boundary for the town of Chino Valley, which is the dark hatched line. You see Old Home Manor within that area. You see a crossed hatch, diagonal hatched area that includes most of the town of Chino Valley. And that describes the boundary of the Prescott Active Management Area. So outside that boundary, to the north of that boundary, is the Big Chino Subbasin, from which the town might be able to import water for use within the active management area. So you see a couple of areas that are identified, HIA lands associated with the upper Big Chino, a number of acres that are associated with the Wineglass Ranch area, which is much closer to the town of Chino, which might be a better location to transport water. Again, though, we need to remember that the possibility of having adverse impacts on the upper Verde River would become more severe the closer you get to those areas. So I know that the town and Mark have had a number of discussions with you about some partnership opportunities to get a better understanding about how that whole system works. So a number of things here that are important to point out. One thing we need to talk about just real quickly, and this is kind of a issue that's going to be important to the town as you move forward, and that's the fact that the town has just recently exceeded the 250 acre foot amount of groundwater withdrawals for use by the service area. At 250 acre feet withdrawal, actually changes the definition of the town of Chino Valley's service area. You were currently and are currently now regulated as a small provider. That 200-foot limit will redefine the town as a large municipal water provider. And it will implement a number of programs that the town will need to undertake in terms of its conservation programs, its reporting programs. We've shared this before with the town as a heads up, and we're assured that many of these programs the town is already doing. So the implementation of a number of these new requirements are either requirements that you're currently doing on your own or have the foundation already established for being able to do into the future. So again, in the larger report, there's a much more detail about many of these ideas. So at this point, I'm going to turn this back over to Bill real quick. And again, thank you very much for having me here.
Are there any printed copies of this presentation?
We can print
Okay, thank you.
This slide just really just kind of summarizes what Jim just said about the large provider to small provider to large provider and what's required to do that. So I think we've already covered that. As far as future water related issues are concerned, we think it's important to plan. We think it's important to have a plan in place. And so we're recommending, along with Civil Tech, that a similar effort that was done here focused on Old Home Manor also be done more broadly within your service area. The transition to, we've talked about this, and as we just mentioned, the town's already compiling the data that's necessary to make this transition and the reporting requirements and things. So you're already well along the way of having the kinds of information that you're going to have to need once the department tells you that you have to start complying with the large provider requirements. The town can encourage development that it wants by doing several things, and that is making the physical availability demonstration work that's already been done available to somebody that's applying for a certificate of assured water supply. There's also, as we've talked about, being able to pledge your credits, recharge credits, extinguishment credits, and so forth, to assist somebody that needs to have a certificate of assured water supply. You can also agree to be the water provider because they have to demonstrate that they have a water supply and a viable water supply. And you can also have them hook up to the wastewater treatment plant because that gives you storage credits. So these are things that the town can do to help encourage the kind of development it wants using the water supply and the water treatment capacity that it has. And this sort of talks somewhat about the same things. It's a little bit duplicative. I just mentioned these things. In fact, it is duplicative, so I'm going to pass on this one. I think we stuck it in there out of place a bit, but so we've already covered it unless you have specific questions about it. And I think now it's time for me to turn it over to the landscape discussion.
Good evening. I'm Celia with Sketch. I'm going to get quite literally in the weeds, so bear with me for a little bit. When we're looking at the landscape plan for Old Home Manor, I'm really trying to advocate here to the importance of landscape. So the goal in moving forward with the development is to greatly reduce water use associated with landscape while enhancing overall aesthetics and increasing land value. And we can really do that with three key areas. One is to require the installation of native low water plants. The second is to encourage the use of passive and active rainwater harvesting systems. And the third is to maintain high landscape requirements and standards, and I'll explain why. When we're looking at the first concept, to require the use of native low water plants, landscape in general provides a lot of benefits, provides wildlife habitat, excuse me, it reduces energy consumption from air conditioning and heating units through shade, minimizes urban heat island created by parking lots and rooftops, again through shade, and improves overall human health by creating desirable outdoor spaces and better air quality, But most importantly for this project, it greatly reduces landscape water use after it's established. I have a few slides just to show what the current native landscape is for this area that is acclimated for actually Chino Valley. So the AMA low water list actually includes plant material that is also appropriate for Prescott, but given our elevation and our average rainfall, I selected just the plants that really relate best to the Chino area. So basically when I'm saying native landscape, I'm not saying just a desolate rock area, with really including a lot of these plants that you find naturally, a lot of the native grasses and perennials, native shrubs, which offer a lot of benefits. One of them being that they are mainly evergreen, which means that they're going to retain their foliage year round. So when we're in the winter months, the landscape will still look nice. And native trees, again, providing that wildlife habitat and allowing us to really greatly reduce water use with the landscape. I also have some native accent planting on there, which are also evergreen and add some interest to the development. That being said, what we don't want to do is ignore the benefit of using shade trees. So a lot of the shade trees that you find on the list are going to be a little bit higher water use. However, that water use is going to be offset by increased property value and decreased energy use. So for every dollar invested in urban trees, you get a return about $1.30 to $3 in benefits from energy savings and increased real estate value. Landscape concept number 2 is to encourage the use of passive and active rainwater harvesting system. So one of the things that we can do to supplement the irrigation required for street trees or for those shade trees is to promote the use of either underground active rainwater collection systems or above ground stormwater bioretention ponds that will help slow and reduce the landscape. In addition, these methods will help reduce built capital costs, reduce repair and maintenance cost, and reduce operations cost with overall stormwater system, basically with the ability to slow down that rainfall that we're going to be able to maintain a smaller standard. Landscape concept number 3, maintain high landscape requirements and standards. So the reason I have this in here is really looking at what our neighboring jurisdictions require. If we do a comparison, Chino Valley requires almost 50% less landscape than what adjacent cities such as Prescott and Prescott Valley require. So a quick comparison, the town of Chino Valley requires 4 shrubs per 400 square feet, where the city of Prescott is going to require 4 shrubs per 250 square feet. Landscape islands is 1 per 15 spaces in Chino. City of Prescott is 1 per 10 spaces. And in addition, they have additional requirements for open space that's outside of the buffer zones. You can see statistics show us that desirable landscapes, when we have more landscape, you get a 7% higher rental rate on any of those office buildings or commercial properties that you sell. Another thing to look at, and here's where we're getting to the weeds a little bit, when we have a area that is without landscaping or it's just landscape rock, what that does is it really creates an environment that creates more weeds. So when you create more weeds, you have constant maintenance issues. Currently, if we look at what the current Parks Department maintains, it's about 83 acres of non-grass area. It takes them solely 15 to 18 weeks per year that they dedicate to weed control. And that's for just looking at 2021. And we're going to spend about $60,000 to $70,000 in weed control. So really the thing to look out here is more native plants equal less weeds. And the reason for that is because when you have native landscaping covering the ground, you eliminate the ability for weed seeds to grow and to harvest. Cost savings for conventional landscapes versus native landscape. This is showing some comparisons with just trees and shrubs. If we're looking at conventional landscape, this is plant material that requires some supplemental irrigation. So gallons of water used annually for looking at 100,000 square foot landscape area, you're going to be at about 154,000 to 460,000 of gallons per year. Annual water cost from irrigation, $500 to $1,500 per year. Annual maintenance cost about $11,000 to $2,100 per year for conventional landscape. If we go to an all native landscape, once those plants are established within 3 to 5 years, zero money per year annually on gallon or 0 gallons per water use per year, zero amount of money used on irrigation. And your maintenance cost is also going to drop to about $9,000 to $19,000 per year. So overall, native landscapes use 77% less water, produce 66% less waste, and require 68% less labor. In closing, overall, if we're able to implement some of these strategies, you're going to have reduced maintenance costs. You're going to reduce and eliminate water use within the landscape. You help mitigate stormwater runoff while adding supplemental water to those areas that need it. And you also increase aesthetics and the property value. I'll turn it over to Victor.
Thank you.
Money costs now. I apologize for some of that because I was tweaking the slides right before we came. And so some of this looks a little odd. So the 5-year plan, we worked with the staff to come up with the highest priorities out in the Old Home Manor. And what we're looking at is developing the southerly part of the business park as kind of the first 5-year program from Jerome Junction all the way up to RV Park Road, whatever we want to call that. And it basically takes you up to the RV park and it completes some infrastructure around there as well. So we looked at it over a 5-year program, and it's ambitious. It may take more than that or less, depending on your funding. In general, I'll just go, each one of these has its own construction issues. Rodeo Drive is the first one that's already designed. So that's ready to go out for bid here shortly. And that's the first phase of the business park development. Got some drainage structures that we're putting in here that'll rechannelize that stormwater from the south. We're taking all the excess grading from that and putting it into this parcel just to the north of Rodeo Drive. And this is about 780 feet of Rodeo Drive being developed. And then year 2, we continue, and it also includes the initial sewer backbone infrastructure. So that's coming in right up here. So you'll have a 12-inch water, 12-inch sewer up to this intersection at the end of this first phase. Second phase takes it up to the RV park. We reconstruct Rodeo Drive all the way up to the intersection here. We're calling this RV Park Road. I'm sure you guys have something better to call it. But we basically take this up and to the RV park. It includes the water and sewer lines as well. The kicker on that one that Rick talked about earlier is that we're going to need that 16-inch Peavine Trail water line to provide adequate fire flow and pressures up at the RV park. We can get some pressures up there, but we can't meet that with the fire flow demands. So we can get the roads and the utilities up there, but you also need to build the Peavine Trail water line. That's a prerequisite to that. Then in year 3, we're calling it the South Loop. So we go back to where we left off at Rodeo Drive. We run it down to the south through the business park, over to this RV Park Road, and then back up to the phase 2 Rodeo Drive, where we ended with the second phase of construction, water sewer infrastructure as well. That allows more development at the RV park area here. And then year 4, we extend the RV Park roadway down to Perkinsville Road with the utilities included, the 12-inch water and sewer. And part of the process that Rick went through was we need to look at the entire development out there so we can adequately size these lines. Even though you may not need a 12-inch line right now to service that area, we're putting in the 12-inch infrastructure that'll carry through all of the Old Home Manor area. And then in year 5, we just extend Rodeo Drive up to Old Home Manor. That picks up the rest of the RV park in here and provides the water and sewer connections up to Old Home Manor Road and kind of cleans up that intersection. So we just kind of realign Rodeo Drive. And there's the costs. So you're looking at 1.5 to 3.5 million per year as these things are phased in. Phase 1 includes the drainage improvements that we need to put on Rodeo Drive. Phase 2 includes the Perkinsville, the Peavine Trail water line. And I don't know if that's about 800,000 for that. Does that sound pretty good with what your estimates have been?
No, that's twice what we have budgeted for it.
Oh,
So
okay, well. So we have some costs associated with that Perkinsville Peavine Trail line. So the first year, about $1.5 million, second year, close to 3, third year, again, you're around 3.5, because that's probably the longest stretch of road that we're building there. So that's why it's a little bit higher. And then phase 4 is just a small piece of extension of the RV park drive down to Perkinsville. And then phase 5 is the extension of Rodeo Drive. So those are the kind of costs that we're looking at on an annual basis as this phases into those first 5 priorities. Yeah, so that's where we're at with the CIP plan. We looked at that area there.
These all tie into our existing water and sewer that we already have in place.
Yeah, actually with this first phase, there is a 12-inch sewer main that Rick talked about that runs all the way down and then flows down to the lift station. So we're tying onto that deep manhole that's in Jerome Junction right here. It's about 13 feet deep, I believe. And we're maintaining that depth through all this potato dirt that you have to dig through there. Keeping this manhole right here fairly low because that's going to extend to the north. And as you go north, you're going downhill. And so it has to be fairly deep there so we can gravity sewer back to that point. And then we run that up to at pretty much the same depth until we get to this intersection. From there, it's a little bit easier to service all the parcels to the east.
And I'm sorry, but that intersection is what you're calling RV Park Road?
No,
To the south?
that's all the way up here. So,
Okay.
so this
the
intersection,
intersection. Okay.
that's this intersection. So this is about 780 feet to get us to that first phase.
yeah, that first intersection is basically in the middle of the business park. So there's a future road in the splitting the business park. That's what that intersection is.
Yeah, your road to the north will go, and in the master plan document that we have, there's a transportation plan that shows the road infrastructure as well. And this is basically creating that first part of the road infrastructure.
It's another 1,860 feet up to, I just, the map to the RV Park Road, you're calling it?
Pardon?
Another 1,860 feet up to the RV
About,
Park.
yeah, it's about that far out. I've got all the links and everything in the report.
In the full report.
Yeah, it's in the full report. So I just pulled the costs out of the report to put them into the table without getting into all the detail. So that's the kind of budgeting you're looking at.
Okay, so between priority 1 and priority 2, that could get it within close enough to actually build
It
it.
gets you up to the RV park and if you put in the Peavine Trail water line, then you have sufficient fire flow and pressures to serve that RV park.
And that's happening. The Peavine's happening.
Right. We've got a grant through the EPA for the Peavine water line that
Question, Frank, in that grant what we got for the building the road and putting the water and sewer in, isn't that included in that first grant that we've been waiting on, the design?
that first grant was ED is in dog, Economic Development Authority. That built the culvert along I don't know, Richard, if you got a bigger zoom, but they put that big culvert in behind El Charro and extended 4 North and then built Jerome
Oh.
Junction with another culvert there.
Right, there's a huge culvert up here and then another huge culvert here and then we're putting.
So we
in a
don't
big
have
one.
any money stashed away?
So that was a couple $1 million and actually Civil Tech designed that. And the
Well,
E.
then we should get a rebate on that.
Well, okay. But the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency grant is for the Peavine Trail water line. They're 2 different grants.
I thought we had money set aside
For which?
for the building the T road that we talked about.
Right, but that's not grant money
Okay, so we do got money aside for that.
for rodeo. It's
So
in
would that
this year's budget for
Would that
rodeo.
make phase 1 of his cheaper?
Well, phase 1 of his, I don't know
No,
if
that
it's
phase-
cheaper, but we're advertising it next week.
Negative. Can you go to your costs?
Oh, I'm
estimate?
sorry.
There we go.
Oh, you can't see phase 1.
Yeah, it's right here. It's
No, I
million
meant
five.
you- the picture of phase
Oh,
one.
that's up here, right here.
Right,
That picture right there where it says the Rodeo Drive sewer truck main.
right. That's part of phase one.
Yeah, this right here is that. So we're just showing where priority one left off, and then priority two becomes the red line construction.
And it,
I guess I'm.
if you don't build it, it'll save you money.
The black line, is that part on the town
That's,
that we're going out for bid for now? Or
And the green,
And the green.
yeah.
So it's all part of your 1.7 or 5.7,
1.5, yeah.
Yeah, right here.
not including the money we have set aside.
No, this is the money we budgeted to do this project.
So it costs that amount, but it's paid for.
It's budgeted.
Yes, it's in the capital improvement fund, sitting there ready to be.
We have
To do priority one.
To do
Correct.
priority
Okay.
one. That's what I was
So
trying to
the-
get to.
yeah.
So it's not really a new cost coming on us.
No, we knew about,
I can't talk,
These-
but I know what I mean.
yeah, we knew about these costs.
Okay, go back to the priority price list then. So we already have priority one in the bank.
It's already budgeted and
That's what I was trying
gonna
to say.
start building it
Why
this
didn't you
year.
just talk for me in the beginning?
Well,
Yes.
I like to hear you stumble. So priority two,
We did 750 this year, we're doing 750 next year, and it's really because we deferred the gas lines. It was a 7.
I can see you.
Okay.
But I can't hear you.
so therefore I'm going back to where I was in the beginning, that we do not have enough money right now. We've not budgeted for priority two.
Correct.
Okay. So if we were to sell property up to 1.5 million, that would put a big dent into priority two and get us very close to.
Correct. Pretty darn close.
That was a pretty simple answer.
Well, I didn't have this chart.
That's all I was asking. Okay, good night.
Two, the 2.67 includes the Peavine water line, which
Right.
he's already.
It's
got
easier when
approved
the
for.
chart's sitting there.
Wait, he just had more input. That sounded good.
Oh, yeah, Rich just pointed out, the Peavine Trail, you have grant money for, or a lot.
Yeah,
of
the
that- a lot
additional
of that
cost,
construction, yeah.
so,
So that
that's-
would be eliminated.
Yeah, that's partially funded.
787.
or a good chunk of it. It depends on how the bids come in.
Frank, how soon do you have to use that grant money?
FY '23.
So then that would drop that maybe down to 2, 2-ish, a little less than 2 maybe.
Depending, yeah, sure.
So that even makes it even closer.
Yep.
I'm liking life so far.
Yep. Sorry, I couldn't say earlier.
Go get your damn appraisal already.
I get this, yes.
That's all she wanted, Mark.
That's right, Maggie's coming back.
What is the 490 additional cost? Is that for the green sewer line?
That's for the big culvert that we have to put in under Rodeo Drive, to carry all
Hang
that.
on,
water. It's just-
everybody, please, time out. Gotta have one person speaking. The minutes are gonna be a
Hey, I was
mess.
speaking, and that's all that
Thank you.
matters.
Our teachers.
Yeah, the roads is about one, and then you've added another 500,000 on for the box culvert structure that we're paying.
I got a backhoe, and you've got culverts, right? So
I got
we
a
can
couple of
cut that off.
shovels. And we're going with plastic.
Yeah, you can do it that way if you want.
We're not talking to you.
Oh. I was agreeing with you.
Okay, what's next?
I don't know. What's
Um,
next? Is
Then
there
we're
more?
just wrapping it up. See, I'm way ahead of schedule on
Final
this.
developments. Delivery.
We're at, yeah, it's all about just, this is the final product that we'll give you. We'll come back one more time with just an executive summary overview. And that's pretty much like a PowerPoint slide, the executive summary. It'll just be a recap of this one that's all finished up. Any comments or input that we get back after tonight.
Is that when we have to pay you? Is after that meeting? Because you
No,
can
we-
push that
no, we-
meeting way out.
We send the bills out before we get the work
Oh,
done.
yeah.
You know, the highest priority is getting the bill out, not getting the work done. You know that. So, yeah, but it'll be wrapping up soon with our final document. And we've been working on it a long time, so we're looking forward to bringing it to fruition.
Mhm.
And then, again, if you have any discussion, but again, here's where the RV park is currently planned. Now, that doesn't mean we can't change it later if you guys change your priorities out there. So this is a living document. we might get some initial development in the business park and you may want to continue that versus extending to the east. So there's lots of options once you get past this first part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to sell land when there's nothing out there right now. So getting something out there is kind of like a
I
high
do have
priority.
two questions for
Sure.
the other Richard.
Oh,
Thank you. Sorry to make you get up. Microphone's over there. Can you explain to me why not do a PRV versus a dual pipeline?
One of the things, my gosh, we really talked a lot, didn't we?
Yeah, that's what we were thinking.
A lot of slides. I cut them down.
The good news is engineering is the only one. that
There's a
has to see
million
the
gallon
subject.
tank here right now.
Okay, yeah.
There's 185,000 gallon tank.
Couple hundred,
Yeah, over here. As we go on and on and on in projection time, we're going to need more storage. And that's basically driven by fire flow capacities, because when you start developing in a commercial scenario up, requirements go up. So where do you put it? We could put it in Bright Star, we could put it over at Country West, or we could put it over here. And the idea of putting it here, actually, it's right over here, Santa Fe Trail in Perkinsville. Elevation wise, it supports it. That is a good spot for a tank that would serve the lower zone. And you could also have, if you desired to, you could have redundancy backflow into this system with a pump station, a small pump station. We are putting in a PRV right here, at least. That's model. There's a million different ways to model things, but we are modeling a PRV right here in order to have dual feed into this system. And then this over in here would just supplement that lower PRV zone.
Does PRV stand for pressure release valve?
Pressure reducing valve.
Reducing.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yep, you should be.
My question was, would it be cheaper to put PRVs on a high pressure line versus putting in a whole nother low pressure line?
Yeah, it would. However, you're still got to get to the point someday where you're going to have to increase your volume of storage. So we could increase the volume of storage over here, knock down the pressure over into this region in here, or we could take advantage of good wells and another reservoir or tank down in this area.
I understand. And the second question is, when you was talking about the sewer, the pumps for the sewer, you were saying upgrade the pumps to a certain CFM or whatever it was.
Gallons per minute.
GPM.
Mhm.
And then it was 5 years, do it again, upgrade. I think there was 3 upgrades in there.
Well, that's just the volume that you really need to pump. Like if, for example, if you, in 2030, you need 800 gallons per minute. Right now, you've got 550. So, I mean, you could put in a series of pumps that, or blanks ready to just insert new pumps whenever you need them. And plus, what are you finding is your lifespan for those pumps? Are they 5 years?
Well, we recently had to replace them with a more adequate style to handle all of the solids that we're getting from COVID related rags and things. So we actually had to change the style of pump. So they outlived their functionality, but we keep spare pumps and we rotate them as needed, 3 or 4 years, something like that. So we maintain those. And like he said, the initial lift station was designed to have a twin lift station next to it. It's already got the piping in the ground to go to it. So we can already build an exact twin of those. We got series of 2 pumps in there now. We can add 2 more quite easily with that twin and then go on in the future as we need to, as the plan expands. And we can double those up when we design those, much like the equalization basin. We're already looking, we need that to meet some of the treatment capacity now because of the difference in the flows we're getting. but we're also looking at it. We're going to go ahead and build it big enough for the plant expansion now. So that's, you know, he's got these design guidelines, but I see us probably doubling up on some of those. If that makes sense.
It does. And you answered my question, because I'm going to say, why not just upgrade to the top GPM in the beginning, but if they only last them 5 years, there's no reason not to.
Yeah, that's what we kind of planned.
That's what my question was going to be.
Step up.
That's it.
Okay,
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
any other question?
Okay, anybody have any questions at all?
I would just like a printed copy.
You got
I
one.
can't see that.
You got one. Yeah. Already got that. And the email,
It's
it's 400 and some pages, right? Isn't
a
it
printed
400?
copy of these slides. Is
Oh,
what I
this
would like.
presentation.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
because I can't see it.
I thought you wanted the whole report.
No, I
We
mean,
got it all, Annie.
I wasn't sure what for.
I'll upload that in the morning to you.
Thank you.
We have a SharePoint file. We can send it to Mark and Frank.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have it tomorrow morning.
my eyes are watering trying to look.
Anything else? Okay.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion made, seconded, all in favor?
Oh, wait, that was your
All
turn.
right. No, not for.
Okay.
All right, opposed? Okay, let's go home.
End of a long day.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Oh, man.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew.
The well water has left